Gan Eden, what's otherwise known in English as paradise. Who hasn't heard of such a spectacular, fabulous place? Everywhere, everybody wants to go there, just not exactly as of yet. Well, Kupadim, we learn about this place, of course, in the beginning of Bereshis, right when we start the beginning of learning about the Torah. Of course, we know the whole entire story with Adam Harishon that finds himself in this fantastic place that's known as Gan Eden. Of course, as the Ramban points out, this place is, as it's simply understood, it's a place surrounded by the rivers Chidekel, Leprat, Gichon, and Pishon. It's a place that has trees. It's a place that has animals. It's a place that has figs and belts and everything that we know about the whole entire story that happens in Gan Eden. Kipshutai mamish, ein mikra yotze miyedei pshutai. Everything that's written in the pasuk stays kipshutai. It stays as a simple understanding. It doesn't say ein mikra eli kipshutai, that it's only pshat. There's remes, there's drush, there's other ideas. But ein mikra yotze miyedei pshutai, it always has the pshat also. And therefore, Gan Eden is a real place. It exists in this world, and it's something that is very tangible and amiti. The question is that we, of course, are familiar with the famous Gan Eden that happens that after, we'll say 120 to be nice, when everybody passes away and a person's body goes down to the ground, and mi offer batavel, offer tashuv, as we know in Parshas Bereshis, that the body has to go back to the ground. We know where does the neshama go? It goes to a place known as Gan Eden. That's where it's able to go and stay, which sounds extremely esoteric. It sounds something ruchani, it sounds something spiritual, not something physical. In our parsha, in the parsha of Bereshis over here in all of Sefer Bereshis, it sounds like Gan Eden is a place that is actually physical. It's a place with trees and animals, etc. But in actuality, we all know Gan Eden is a place of spirituality. It's a place where the neshamas goes. That's where it basks in the Ziva Shechina, enjoying from the Shechina of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's where it's able to go. As we know, that's not really Olam Haba. We spoke about this in the Afterlife Shiurim. Olam Haba, according to everybody except for the Rambam, is of course Tchiyat HaMeitim, is in the resurrection of the dead. But that's not for now. Gan Eden is at least a place that everyone goes in the Olam HaMet after he passes away until eventually he gets to Tchiyat HaMeitim. So this is a contradiction that needs to be resolved. Is Gan Eden, this physical world that it seems to be existent from the Parsha that stands in front of us, in Parshas Bereshis, or is Gan Eden the next world, upstairs, a place that's completely spiritual? The answer to this is written in a number of Sfarim, especially the Ramban and Shara Gemul, which I quoted a number of times in the Afterlife Shurim. The Ramchal is in Dat Tfunot, also in Siman Kuf Chavav. The Nefesh HaChaim in Chelik Bet Perik Vav. And others speak about this phenomenon, and that is that we have to know that there are two Gan Edens. There's something known as a Gan Eden Tachton and a Gan Eden Elyon. There's a lower Gan Eden and an upper Gan Eden. Bezrat Hashem will speak out why we require both of them. The Gan Eden Tachton was this place that we are reading about in Parshas Bereshis, and that is the place that actually has physical trees. It's a place that is completely of Kedusha on a very high level, but it's a physical place, so to speak. And then there's the Gan Eden Elyon, which is above it. All the Kedusha that comes to Gan Eden Tachton from the lower Gan Eden comes from the higher Gan Eden. It's able to receive it from the higher realms. It's Kebiyochel Ashar L'Shamayim. The lower Gan Eden is a opening, it's a gateway to order to get to the higher upstairs Gan Eden, which exists over there. The true Ruchani, the true spirituality of complete closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the higher Gan Eden Elyon, which eventually everybody Bezrat Hashem gets to. But the Gan Eden Techton has a reach, a smell. It has a little bit of snuff, a little bit of smell, that it gets a reich of Gan Eden Elyon because it is parallel to the higher Gan Eden. So the lower Gan Eden has a smell of that Kedusha B'Torah also. It's a place of the Ziva Shechina. It's a place of connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a place of Shleimut. There's no bigger hana, enjoyment, tranquility, peace in this world more than the Gan Eden Tachton of where it exists in this world. So you're going to ask me, where is this place? So believe it or not, the Gemara addresses the Gan Eden Tachton in a few places. The Gemara in Eruvin and Daf Yutet brings from Reish Lakish that he says, if it's in Eretz Israel, Gan Eden, so therefore Beit Shan, which is not so far from Tiberia, is the Petach of Gan Eden. It's funny because Beit Shan is one of the lowest, the cheapest places to buy in Eretz Israel. So if you want to buy the Petach of Gan Eden, it might be Kedai. It's not too expensive. It's in Arabia. It's in one of the Arab countries, which he doesn't specify. So the name of the Petach is Beit Garas, he says. And if it's amongst the Naharot, if it's one of those 4 rivers, which I mentioned before, which are mentioned in the Parsha, and Parshat Breshit, so then Dumaskinan is the place. Al Kopanim, I realize that I have a feeling that even us geographers don't know exactly the place that Reish Lakish is referring to, and therefore we don't know exactly where the Petach of Gan Eden is, but it exists really in this world. The Gemara in Tamid brings down that it might be somewhere in the North African region. There's a Tosim of Basra and Bechoros, there's a Pirkei of Elazar and Perek Chaf that says Gan Eden is next to Har Moriah, which is already in Eretz Israel. Why? The Kotel, right next to the area of the Beit HaMikdash. Obviously not clear where it is. The Ramban points out it is somewhere along the equator. That's what the Ramban says in the Kav HaShaveh. Apparently they knew about the equator back then also. And the Ramban says it's a place where it always has 12 hours by day, 12 hours by night. It's a place that is non-changing, of perfect tranquility, and therefore he says it's somewhere along the equator, somewhere there. And he brings the Ramban an interesting maaseh in Shari Gemul. He brings amongst the Greeks that all the greatest of doctors, 40 of the greatest doctors in amongst the Greeks, which was the empire of the time. Obviously, the doctors in Greece were led by a person by the name of Escalopnis. I can never pronounce a Greek name very well. Escalopnis. That this person led 40 great doctors to the far-off boondocks of the regions. They went beyond India in order to find 2 things they wanted to find. Things that had to do with refuah, with medicinal healing. They were looking for different special types of leaves and herbs and spices that they could only find in the Far East, that they were looking to be able to find. That's A. And also, believe it or not, yes, back then they also believed in our Torah, they were looking for the Etz HaChaim. Using special maps and special understandings, they were looking for where they could find the Etz HaChaim, the tree of life, which is mentioned in Parshat Breshit, which if you eat from it, it's the fountain of youth, what everybody always dreams about, having be able to have the fountain of youth, being able to become young again, to be able to live forever. So he brings down there, and he brings based on a Jewish doctor that brings the story down, that knew about the Maaseh, and he brings that they went, and eventually they were able to find the Petach to Gan Eden. They themselves found the Petach Gan Eden. But at the Petach, at the opening, there was the Cherev HaMitla, we all know the Cherev, the sword, which is mentioned, HaMitapechet, which is mentioned in our Parsha, which goes around and around and around, which is a fiery sword, which is protecting the entrance. And Rashi actually writes that it's there to protect people from getting closer. But the Ramban seems to use, based on the story, that it actually zaps them. And all of these 40 men, plus the big Greek guy, Escaplinos, they all died. They all died on the spot based on the fact that they were shot by this ballistic missile from this Cherev HaMitapachet by trying to enter into the Gan. They made the mistake of approaching the Gan, and they were taking care of it. Now, I would hear a story, and I'd go, okay, but listen to the words of the Ramban. V'kol elu divrei emeten, says the Ramban, it's all true. Gluyim umefursamim gam hayom. Even today we know that it exists, and it's real, and it's a fact. Ki rabbi mibaya aretz alazu b'nei kedem, yiru mirochok alata mitapech. And many people have seen the lata mitapech, but they've stayed far, far away. These people were stupid enough to get close, but they've seen it. We don't know where it is. And, with all our archaeological digs and stuff, we still have not been able to get there. But the Ramban says that it was known, and we know about it, and people just stay away, but it seems to be a fact. So believe it or not, there is a Gan Eden in this world, and it has a Cherev in front of it, so I wouldn't get too close, but at least from here we understand the expression, heaven is a place on earth, because it seems to be something that really exists. Now, after that introduction, what is this place? What is it like? Is it really a physical place with trees? And this just sounds like some type of paradise which you see in a movie. What is it, another Maui, another Hawaii? What's going on here? Puerto Rico? So says the Dat Tvunot in the Ramchal over there, he basically says that don't think, chas v'shalom, that there's any type of physical enjoyment from this place, even though it might be a physical place. A person is not nene, enjoying from the peirot, from eating the trees and from washing up over there in the beautiful rivers, etc., etc. Don't think that way. It's a ruchani, dak veruchani type of, a very subtle, esoteric, spiritual type of enjoyment, which is connected to the physical body, but in a very spiritual type of way. In his own mashal, he would say, just like we know the afar, the dirt, is a physical phenomenon, and we know the ruach, the avir, the oxygen, the air in the world is also a physical phenomenon, something that exists. But we don't compare the two. One is heavy and one is light. One is much more abstract. One's much more dak. It's much more kal, it's zach, it's pure, it's something much clearer and condensed. So that's the difference between, just like we see there's a difference between afar and avir, between something that is a physical dirt as opposed to the ruchot, the winds. So too is this type of eating. The eating that they had there, the food, the trees, the rivers, were something much more esoteric. It was a physical one, but it was on a much more esoteric basis, something that our bodies would not be able to digest. We would not be able to wash up in such spiritual waters. It's on too high a level. Like the Be'er Shel Miriam, just like the mun, which the Nefesh HaChaim points out, just like the mun was a spiritual food. It was a food they digested in their body, but only very, very spiritual people can eat it. The man, which they ate in the desert for 40 years, was the ochel of the malachim. It's what the angels eat. And therefore, it is a very high level of type of food. That's what it's like in Gan Eden. It's something on a much higher type of level. Ochel shel malachim. Bikshu Malachei Sharet Lomar Lefanav Shira. We know that all of the Malachim wanted to say Shira in front of Adam Rishon because he was on such a high spiritual level that he had the credentials to be able to live in a place that we call Gan Eden. You don't have to buy a first-class ticket to get there. You have the credentials to be a fully spiritual being, such as Adam Rishon, which came out no person on this planet ever got there, except maybe for Moshe Rabbeinu. He was able to be on such a tremendous level, and therefore he was able to live with this type of spirituality before the Chet and be able to be satisfied in such an area. Also the Ma'asim, and that's why every little action that Adam Rishon did was so powerful. Every action, because when a person is on such a high spiritual level, every little action that he does has so much ramifications. It has so much outcome. And that's because of his great, incredible spiritual level. If we move to the words of Rav Dessler in Chelik Aleph 293 and Chelik Daled 152, he writes over there that his body, he had a body, Adam Rishon had a physical body, but it was like our clothing. Our clothing, it could be taken off and removed on off. It's very temporary. You don't see the clothing as part of yourself unless you're a rabid teenager. B'ikaron, you don't focus on your clothing too much. It's just there to be able to take care of yourself, to be able to walk outside. You don't see it as something that's a fundamental part of yourself. That's how he saw his body. His physical body was just something temporary. It wasn't something very quick. It was something that was just fleeting. It was not going to be around. It's here, there, gone tomorrow. His whole focus was his neshama. His neshama, which was also spiritual, was on a totally different level, and therefore he was kulei neshama. He was completely spiritual. And he had a body as a physical outside being. That's what it was like. That's why lo yidbosheshu. That's why they weren't embarrassed of their body. We have such a focus on our body. Our body is so physical that we're embarrassed to walk out the way, completely, as they say, unclothed, without anything. At least in some places in the country, that we're worried about being undressed because it's already focused so much on the physical. So therefore, you are embarrassed to walk outside, and that's the way it's supposed to be, at least at this stage. That's the idea of tzniut, which is not for now. As opposed to Adam Rishon, it was so temporal, it was so temporary, it wasn't meant to be there. So therefore, as the Ramban writes in his Pirush al Breishit, Kol Evreim Ayu B'Eneim K'mo Panim V'Yadayim. Everything, every Aver was nothing overdone, it was nothing over-focused on. The Rambam writes in the beginning of Mor Nevuchim the same idea. Anyways, from here we learn the incredible level of Adam Rishon and how high the level was of Gan Eden, even though it's still, in the end of the day, in a physical world. you are still able to reach an incredible kirvat Hashem. You're able to get a hana nitzchi. It had a tremendous amount of hana'ah. It was part of being able to reach the sodot elyonim. Again, the food in Gan Eden itself wasn't what gave you the pleasure. It was the connection from that world to the higher worlds. It was the focus of Gan Eden Tachton to Gan Eden Elyon. You're able to get a whiff, a taste, a smell, a connection to the higher kind of Gan Eden Elyon. Why is the Beit HaMikdash a place of so much Kedusha? Why do we think Yerushalayim is everything, our focus of everything is always to Yerushalayim? Every Shemona Esrei, we all daven towards Yerushalayim. Nevuah, prophecy, only can be done in Eretz Yisrael. What makes these places special? The answer is because Yerushalayim Shalmata is connected Yerushalayim Shalmala. It itself has no intrinsic spirituality. But because it's the gateway to the higher Yerushalayim, because the Beit HaMikdash is directly connected to the place of the Kisei HaKavod, or the Evan Shati, where the world started to be created, it's connected to our world. From there we are able to get a little bit of aura from the higher worlds down to this world, and therefore that's a place of spirituality. When we go to the Kotel, we try to tap into that spirituality, not a wall. That's not a wall of grass. It's because the wall, that place behind the wall, what's connected there is directly connected to the higher worlds, and therefore it has a specific Kedusha. There are rules and regulations when you walk in there, how you have to act, whether you're allowed to wear shoes, what kind of kavanot you're allowed to have. You have to be tahor, you can't be tameh, you can't be spiritually impure, etc., etc. That's what we should be familiar with. And therefore, Gan Eden Tachton is the same recipe. It's the same type of idea. It's a remez in the words of the Ramban. It's a gashmut. It's a physicality. It's making something very spiritual, physical, and therefore all the hana'ah, the enjoyment that one reaches in Gan Eden is completely spiritual. But again, you have to have the qualifications to be able to get there. You have to have the credentials of Adam Rishon to be able to be there, because you're not nana from the te'ena, from the fig, or from the pomegranate that's there, or from the tree itself. You know, in Gan Eden, the tree itself had a taste. You're able to eat from the bark, but that has nothing to do with what it's about. That's what it is. And therefore, there's Gan, there's Eden, and as he writes over there, Eden itself is Tzor HaChaim, the Sneged Kisei HaKavod. That's really connected the place of the Kisei HaKavod. Al Gopanim, that's the idea of Gan Eden. Now you're going to ask me, so when do people go into this Gan Eden bit exactly? The people, Adam Rishon was in Gan Eden. He got thrown out head first after the sin. And when exactly do we get back? No, we're not going to take any exhibitions or class tours to be able to find it, because I'm not interested in dropping dead also by the Schera Mitapachat. But we all know that when a person does pass away, he goes to Gan Eden Tachton. Now, what's the purpose of that? You might as well just go straight there. So over here, and with this we're finishing, we get to a piece which we spoke about in the Afterlife Shurim, which I'll mention the Kitzur here in short. You could look over there where we spoke at length. And that is, when a person dies, as we all know, we say Kaddish for 12 months. A child says for a parent 12 months of Kaddish. What's the reason? Because the person the neshama doesn't leave the body for 12 months, meaning it's out of the body, it's definitely out and it's above the body. But it goes, as the Gemara in Shabbat says in Kuf Nun Bet, it goes back and forth. And neshama olevi yoredet me'akever. It goes from Gan Eden and back, haloch v'chazor. That's why we know when you're Menachem Avel, there's an idea that the neshama is there also. You should know, even if a person's sitting by himself, at least in the Nusach of Bnei Ashkenaz, you say, Amokim Yinachem Etchem B'toch Yerushalayim. You say in plural. There's one guy sitting there, and what are you saying? Amokim Yinachem Etchem. Because you're being Menachem, the Oval and the spirit, the soul that's sitting right next door, next to him. They both have a certain type of connection over here. And this neshama goes back and forth for 12 months between the kever, between the Shiva house, between Gan Eden. It goes back. Now that's a long trip to go back to Gan Eden, back and forth so many times. But the answer is, you know what? It's not that far, especially if he lives in Eretz Yisrael. Because, especially if the kever is in Eretz Yisrael, and kever is in Eretz Yisrael, he's right next door, because he's going back and forth from the Gan Eden Atachton, the lower Gan Eden, not the higher Gan Eden. Those 12 months, he's basking in the goodness of the Gan Eden Atachton, from the lower Gan Eden, not the higher one, which receives its hashpah, its shefa, its enjoyment, its savoring enjoyment from as a shar shamayim. It's a gateway to the upper skies, and therefore you're able to get that enjoyment from the higher worlds, even though he still hasn't gotten there. And that's the idea of the Gan Eden Tachton. Now, since everything has inertia, we know what inertia is all about. A person sitting in a car that's going 60 miles an hour and he slams on the brake, he goes flying through the windshield, because a body likes to continue in the motion that he is presently. It doesn't like to change its motion. When a person sitting on a chair is I am presently, it's really hard for me to get up to get that safer. I have to go look something up. Just not easy, because the situation of inertia always says, like we say in the world of chazaka, like it's a chazaka, you want to just leave it the way it is. And therefore it takes a while for the body to adjust itself until it's able to get to the higher Gan Eden, to get to that fantastic place we call, I'll call it Olam Haba, even though it's not Mamash Olam Haba, to the Gan Eden Elyon, to the Olam Neshamot, that's what it's referred to. So it takes 12 months of adjusting, depending, of course, on who the person is. Some people take less, some people not. Big tzaddikim can probably get a straight one-way ticket. They just go straight upstairs. Depends on who you are. But that adjustment requirement leaves him in between his kever and in between Gan Eden and Tachton until he's able to be Olav Yored. And in the lashon of the Sifrei Kabbalah, he's Lovesh HaMalchut. He's Lovesh Malchut, as we know by Esther. Why does it mean that she was Lovesh Malchut? She wore the big day Malchut. It means that he finally gets to get to this final destination. He's able to get to where he needs to be. That's what the Shari Kedusha of Chaim Vital writes. The Lashon of the Zohar, big day, he removes his big day Tzoyim, finally after 12 months, meaning not immediately by death. For those 12 months, he didn't remove completely his big day Tzoyim, his dirty clothes, only after he finally gets to the place that Zach v'naki lamala el yonim. And therefore we find this phenomenon that there is a lower Gan Eden, higher Gan Eden. And that's what happens. It could have been by the time of Adam Rishon, we could be living in a lower Gan Eden while we were alive. Moshe Rabbeinu and Har Sinai, Minastam, reached such a level. Over there it says that he was mitlabesh, he dressed up in an anan v'arafel, with a cloud of glory. He was dressed in a cloud, and he went up. That's why he didn't have to eat for 40 days. He didn't have to change and do anything. He didn't do anything for 40 days. He was just basking in the Ziva Shechina. He was learning the whole entire Torah for 40 days. How is it possible? A man is, in the end of the day, a physical human being. So like I mentioned before, this is the one person who ever reached Adam Harishon Kodem Achet. He reached the level of Adam Harishon before the sin. He wore what's called the Chalukah de Rabbanan, the Chaluk, the dress of the rabbi, the Chalukah de Rabbanan, or Big Day Malchut, the dress of kingship, of aristocratic. And he was up there dressed and being able to be connected to a Kodesh Baruch Hu b'chvodo u'be'atzmai. That was the present that he was able to receive, being able to go even as a physical body. He went to the Olamot HaElyonim. With this you understand Chazal's left and right. Famous Gemara at the end of Ketuvot, which I think they learned recently, not so recently, a little while ago, in Ketuvot, Kuv Gimel, right at the end. We all know when Rabbeinu HaKadosh died, even after he died, he came down to his family and he made Kiddush for them. He made Kiddush for them every week on Friday until finally the maidservant saw it, and she gasped for breath. She couldn't believe it, and he never came back again. Now, how could he come and make Kiddush? First of all, it's a beautiful Gemara, but you know, the Lidfox, the Sefer Chassidim and the Tosfot, they come and ask, a nice esoteric Gemara. Rabbeinu HaKadosh comes down, he makes Kiddush for his family, it sounds so beautiful. They come and ask, a met is potter for mitzvot. A dead person is potter for mitzvot. How can it be moitzi them with kiddush? To be moitzi someone with kiddush, you have to be chayv in mitzvot. A child can't be moitzi someone who's chayv in kiddush because he himself is not chayv in kiddush. So how is Rabbeinu HaKadosh able to do that? Kind of like ruin the whole juice of the Gemara, Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Anyways, but the answer is based on everything that's here, and this is what the Mefarshim already say, is that, no, it was the first 12 months. During the first 12 months, he didn't strip away his body completely. It still existed. And he went down dressing up in his body, and he was able to do the Kiddush for them. After 12 months, it would already be finished, but at least during that time period, he was still back and forth a little bit, and he still had a certain connection. That's what it says in the Sefer Chassidim, which is brought in the Gilui Neshas over there. And it's also really in the Zohar. Eliyahu Navi, Chanoch, we know these are people that were alive and dead at the same time. They died, but they didn't die. Did they die? Did they not die? The answer is that he wore Chalukah de Rabbanan. Eliyahu Navi, when he comes down to this world, he he dresses up, and he puts on his physical body, and that's how he comes down to this world in his big day gufay atzoyim, and by him it's atzoyim, but he wore big day gufay in the beginning of his physical body. As opposed to when he goes up, so then he dresses in Levush Malchut, he goes ahead and dresses. Of course we know, Yaakov Avinu lo met. We're going to see at the end, in Parshat Vayechi, in the end of in Sefer Breshit, Yaakov Avinu never died. Says the Ramban over there, in the Rabbeinu Bechaya also. Over there in Parshat Vayechi, he says, what's pshat? What does it mean he didn't die? He did die, Chanut Echad, and we know that they embalmed his body. But the answer is, he says, well, everybody else, they die, they go to Gan Eden Tachton, and eventually they go to the higher Gan Eden, and finito, they're gone, that's it, they're no more connected here. They're enjoying themselves, basking in the realm of the Ziva Shechina, enjoying themselves upstairs. But Yaakov Avinu, because of the Otzem Kedushat Gufo, because his goof was so kadosh, he went through a very difficult life, and he was able to mekadosh his goof to an utter T, to make it completely zach v'noki, to make it completely pure, that there is no realm of any type of sediment. There's nothing wrong with his body. So therefore, Yaakov Avinu lo met, his body still is part of him, and he's able to come down sometimes, and he's able to be upstairs, and downstairs he's able to go back and forth, very similar to what we understand when it comes to Eliyahu Navi, or Chanoch, or Yaakov Avinu, or Pinchas, who was really just a Gilgal of Eliyahu, but Al Panim, the other way around. Eliyahu's a Gilgal of Pinchas. Anyways, that's the idea. The Ramban also explains in another place, Tchiyat HaMeitim, we know in the year 6000, which is coming soon, we're already around Gog Magog time over here, that we know the world will be destroyed, will be all watery. And he says we'll be wearing knafayim, whatever that means, we're wearing wings, whatever that means, it's not for now. But the idea behind it is that how can we survive in a world that's completely liquidated, there's no place to think, and we still have physical bodies. Tchiyat HaMeitim, we're talking about the resurrection of the dead. That means we're with physical bodies. But the answer is, it's a physical body which is similar to Adam Rishon. The body is just an external complement. It's something that is there as like a dress, just to be able to exist. But the focus is all neshama. Your whole entire neshama, that's who you are. The body has no extra importance. You don't see it as something important. The best mashal, this will finish, that I can think of course, is when we know, when you ever see when the first man landed on the moon, or even the second, it doesn't make a difference. Who was that? Everyone knows Neil Armstrong. Nobody knows who number 2 was, Buzz Aldrin. But anyways, when they landed on the moon, I didn't see any man. I saw this big, funny figure with a flat face in front of him. Okay, so it had a nice flag of America on his shoulder. But it didn't look like anything that had any type of image of a man. It looked like some alien from outer space, if you ask me. But the answer is, we all know that inside is the person. That's the real man inside. He was just wearing that spacesuit in order to be able to exist. That's the only way that he could survive there. If there's one little pinhole inside of that spacesuit, he would blow up in thin air. He would suffocate immediately. That spacesuit is only as a point of survival. Nobody would put any type of dagesh, any type of importance to that spacesuit. Okay, they put it in some museum so everybody could see what landed on the moon, but no one would ever give any type of importance to such a phenomenon. Everybody knows the importance is the man. He's the one that won the medals, the importance, the kavod. And that's what it's like, La'atid Lavo. The focus of this body that we put so much into, and we overdo it sometimes, we just put it over focus, that will be a forgotten phenomenon. That will be just a dress. Our focus will be so much on the neshama and building it and stretching those muscles, and this is the lesson that we have to learn from this whole entire idea about the fantastic connection that we have Be'ezrat Hashem to Gan Eden, the fact that we have we are Bani Matem Hashem Elokeichem, and that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu writes about this whole story about Gan Eden and Parshas Bereishis in order to teach us this fantastic phenomenon that we have, that one day Be'ezrat Hashem will have utter ecstasy, complete Menuchat Nefesh, in the real way what we call Menuchat Nefesh, of relaxation of what it's supposed to be like, which is a complete connection, a closeness to the Borei Olam. Shabbat Shalom.